Welcome everybody. We're going to make a start. What today's going to be about is just some tips for effective website design and just making your Google sites effective in their presentation and their outcome and their goals. So we've all quick disclaimer as we welcome some more people from.
Looks like De La Salle Cronulla.
From Cronulla, welcome. As I was saying, just a little disclaimer before we begin. You may be aware that this VC session is aimed at an intermediary to an advanced level. Using Google Sites, so there are going to be some assumptions that I'm making that you're already able to create a Google site and the basics of where everything is, like managing the site and editing the site layout, etc. This is more designed. This VC session is more designed for tweaking the basics to make things more effective. So you get more. Welcome. Hello.
Hello.
How you going?
Good, how are you?
Not too bad. If I could just get you to mute your microphone, that'd be great. And as I was just saying, that this is going to be aimed at an intermediate to advanced level, so there are some assumptions, as you were aware when you registered. It was on the top of that document. So you're more, if that's obviously might have scared a few people off. If you still feel you want to continue, I won't be offended if this is going to go above your head and you want to use your time a little bit better. But it is some very helpful tips. So let's get started. If you want to access the document, you can via this typing this into your browser, and you'll access the presentation to follow along with me as I go through the things. Also, be creating a site from scratch using in real time to show you a few of the basic steps. So because it's very handy to see how things work as how to do things rather than just be told how to do things. So before anything, when you're creating your Google site, you need to ask yourself the most important question that you have to ask yourself. What is the site designed to achieve? So is it aimed towards parents? Is it aimed towards students? Is it aimed towards staff? Is it aimed to cater for both staff and students? Is it a public website? What are you trying to achieve with your site? And that is a question that helps drive your planning. Because once you've decided, okay, I want to make an intranet that's only staff accessible, then you can start planning for that specific purpose. If you are creating a class-based website for just your primary school class, excuse me, okay, that has its inherent things that you need to include, and that'll take you on a different path. Okay, so you need to really decide before you do anything, what do you want to achieve with that site? Once you've done that, you need to start planning, because planning is probably one of the most important processes when you're creating your site. I find it's very helpful to draw out a plan on using pencil and paper. Labeling each screen and how they link to each other, and I think that's a very effective way of planning ahead. You might be a more conceptual thinker. You might use the whiteboard. It's really up to you how you plan, but planning is essential. Yes, it's good to get your hands dirty and get in there straight away and start mucking around. But if you're creating something that's going to be used quite heavily, and that you want to have in place that's used from a lot of people. It's going to be relied upon, especially if you're using it for, for your class, or if it's something a little bit more, got to do with infrastructure, like a KLA-based website or something like that. It needs to be up and it needs to be designed appropriately. So you need to think about your layout, the name of your site, if there's already a naming convention. For instance, if you have multiple KLA websites, you'd want to use the same, the same naming conventions that you have around the other sites as well. What kind of page hierarchy do you want? Do you want to have an intro page? Do you want to have, if you're going to have a staff and students section, do you want to divide that audience at the top level? So, for instance, do you want to have, an initial page that splits your audience? So staff click here, students click here. Okay? So that page hierarchy is important, and it helps if you're planning it out, visually, like maybe drawing out a map. What sections are you going to need to have? So you need to think about what kind of sections do you need. Do you need a resource section? Do you need a section with that is for parents? Do you need a section that you can embed YouTube, or what kind of sections do you need? And then you can go about finding the tools to address those sections. For instance, if you have a homework section or a lessons section, you might want to use a different page setup than you did your intro page or your photo slideshow page. Okay. Access is also important to consider when you want to access your page. Do you want to have a staff-only section of your website? Do you want anyone to be able to access? Is this a public site? Is it a student-oriented site? Okay, who do you want to have access? Do you want any student at the school to access, or just a select few just in your class? Okay, and then finally, once you've got all that set up, the content. Okay, the main content of your website is what it's going to achieve, and this is how you're going to achieve it by putting in your content. And once you've got all that organized and set up and a good idea on what to do there, you can then go ahead and once you've made those decisions, it's good to move ahead and start creating your website. One of the key design principles that's used all over the web is to keep things simple, and I think that's one of the main ideas on an effective website is one that's simple. So people don't want to be looking at a website and being bombarded with a ton of information that they can't really discern what's important. They're distracted, and the language might not be appropriate for those people, for that audience. So you need to think about who's your audience. So is it staff and students? You need to use language that's appropriate maybe to your specific, if it's a KLA website, you might want to use KLA jargon in there. If it's a student-based website, you might want to keep things, down to 2 or 3 words. So it's really, really simple for them to grasp where they need to go, what they need to click on. Okay? You shouldn't really assume too much when creating a website. You need to have things very, very simple, very laid out, and we'll go through that a little bit later, and I'll show you some really good examples. Also, don't give too much choice. I know it's good to have choice in a website. It's good to have many sections and many options and all that. But if you give the audience too much choice, they can become confused. For instance, if you have multiple ways to get to one section, that it's not really effective. Rather than if you keep things simple and concise, minimizing the amount of steps between X and your end goal, I think that's a really effective way in which to, achieve your goal. Because at the end of the day, it's all about what's your goal, what's your aim of the website, and how you're going to achieve it. Again, don't flood the screen with information, and we'll get to white space in a moment. Some people are very, very scared. Oh, this page is too bare. I've got to fill up this little white space in the corner there with something. Okay, you shouldn't be afraid of white space, and we'll get to that. And at the end of the day, quality over quantity. Okay, keep things. You want to get more quality information over your, instead of, again, flooding the screen with information. Okay, accessibility is very, very important. You need to decide who it's designed for. Okay, so you need to think about your language that you're using on each page. Is the skill, you need to keep the website skill appropriate. For instance, if you have, very, very adept audience, you can probably assume that they know that, this part of the website is interactive. If you have a new audience that hasn't been to the website before, you might need to, create a little bit of, you might need to prompt the user on what they need to do. Okay? That's again going to our third point. You don't want to assume their ability too much, because once you start assuming, people aren't aware that maybe this link is clickable. Maybe they might not be aware that, you want this person to fill out this embedded form. Or, they might not be aware that this links to my Google Drive if I click this. Okay, so you don't want to assume the ability of the audience, and you want to make it skill appropriate. Instant gratification. People, when they visit a website, want to be, they don't want to spend too long on the website. They want to, get in, find what they need, and get there. Okay, so the rule that I usually apply to when I create a website is having a maximum of maybe 3 or 4 clicks to get to my end goal, whatever that end goal might be. Okay, so if I've clicked 5 or 6 times, I'm doing something wrong, because, I haven't designed my website effectively, because, it takes me too long to get from point A to point B. So I have my rule of, 3 or 4 absolute maximum, and then, if it takes me longer than that, then, I haven't designed something as effectively as it can be. Maybe I need to tweak something. Maybe I need to insert it into another section. Okay? Scrolling to search for things is, I try not to make things, I don't want to scroll down, 100 times just to find something on the page. Okay. But if you've created a library of options, then, browsing is okay. So if they don't know what they want, and you have a whole host of options for browsing, then I don't see a problem with that. But if they know what they want, if the audience knows what they want, they shouldn't have to go scrolling for it. Okay? So that's the kind of the distinction I made for scrolling. I'll just do a quick pause. Is there any questions from the audience so far? No? No questions? We're going to get to, some live demos in a second, so I'm just going to go through the rest of, the basic principles first. So we'll move on. As I was saying before, white space. Don't be afraid of it, okay? You notice these slides are pretty bare bones. Obviously, I'm not afraid. Clean interface is better than information overload. So if you have a clean interface with only a few things on it, and it is effective in its delivery of its information and its choices, then that's fine. If that achieves your goal, that's fine. Don't think that, because there's a whole heap of space down the bottom, I need to fill that up with, links, or maybe chuck in a gadget here because, I want a countdown clock over here because, just in case. Okay, if it doesn't fit your aim, you don't need to put it in. Don't feel pressured into filling up that white space. And there's that whole balance over form versus function. Do you want to make it, a good-looking website that doesn't really achieve your goal effectively, or do you want to make it, as you can get to everything on the front page? Okay, that might be a little bit too cluttered. So you've got to find that balance in form and function, and it is a balance. Okay, and as I go from that third point, it is a balance. Okay, and you can do that in the page settings, which and you can remove unwanted things in Google Sites, and I'll show you how to do that in the page settings a little bit later. Okay, keep design consistent. Consistency is key with websites, okay? Because once you stop being consistent, people lose track of where they need to go. So, for instance, if they go to a link for a page below, and the menu is now gone from the top and it's on the right, they lose their place, and you'll lose your audience as well. And it's very, very easy to confuse people. So consistency is key. That means going the same colors, fonts, sizes of fonts, sizes of images. Okay, we'll get to finding the right size of things a little bit later, like counting pixels and all that. And yeah, so you want to present your information using a convention, whether that might be using color, using a certain theme, and that needs to be consistent throughout your whole website. And if it's across, if you've made a few different sites, if you want to keep that consistent across many websites, that's probably even more effective. But at least across the single website, keep things consistent. Color schemes, fonts, and sizes of things. Also, before you make things live, test it. So you need to consider, people might be accessing my site from an iPad. What does my site look like on an iPad? People might be accessing my site from a different browser. What does that look like? What does it look like in Safari versus Chrome? Are things skewed with different resolutions? For instance, if I was creating a site, I was working on a site today, and because I had connected up to an external monitor, that monitor was a different resolution as my computer. So when I plugged everything in and I took it out of my external monitor, everything skewed because I hadn't tested it from a different resolution. And you should want to create your site on the resolution that it's most going to be accessed, because you might not be able to get around things might being a little bit off on a mobile device. So, obviously you don't want to create it on the mobile device because that's very, very, especially with Google sites, it's quite difficult. But if you're creating on a laptop, keep the zoom in at 100% because that's what's going to be for the majority of your users. Don't have everything zoomed in and then start creating, because that plays all kinds of havoc on the interface. Okay, so I've talked about browsers. It's okay to launch early. So if you haven't got everything 100% perfect, it's okay to launch early, and I encourage people to launch early, because the more people get used to having their hands on the site, the better it is. But not before you can at least achieve your aim. So you might, want your site to be created for, your Year 6 class. And if the goal of your site is to at least have an access to all of your lessons, for instance, before you can achieve that goal, you shouldn't launch. If you can at least show them your lessons, that's your goal, you can launch. It might not be the finalized. Everything might not be, all the little, the icing on the cake might have not been ready. But at least you can achieve your aim, and you should be able to launch whilst you've done that. And we'll go into a handy tip to do is preview as a viewer. Actually, I'll quickly show you that. If I've made a site here, okay, you can see that this top bar is there because I own the site, okay? It shows me my edit button, my new page button, my more options, and my share button. This is not what it looks like for a viewer, someone who doesn't own the site. So, for instance, anyone at De La Salle any of the students will not see this white bar. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to preview the page as a viewer. I'll just show you that quickly again. You go to More, Preview Page as Viewer, and it'll open up the same website, but in a different, but as the viewer would see it, minus obviously this little notification up here. And you can preview it as a viewer in the mobile sense or in the desktop situation. And you can notice that the white bar is now missing. Okay, so the white bar is missing, and that might throw out some of your layout. Okay, so something that you assumed might be in line with this horizontal bar, it might not as a viewer. So it's important to preview things as a viewer before you, as a part of your testing regime. So we can continue. Also, if you're going to be using sites, it's a very, very, very handy to be able to do some image editing. So whether that's you know how to use Photoshop, which is probably the easy, not the easiest, probably the hardest, the most technical way to do things. Oh, let me go back. But if you might not have Photoshop, it is quite expensive. You might not need it for just one website, and I can completely understand that. There are some free options out there. For instance, I'll be using Picmonkey today, which is a browser-based image editing tool. Pixlr is another one that's also very good. It's very Photoshop-esque, but it is browser-based as well, and it is free to use. Even Paint can be used, and you can do some things with the new Paint that you couldn't do with the old one, and it's very basic in its abilities, but at the end of the day, if you can customize a picture, it's very, very beneficial, okay? Especially when creating images for specific purposes. To find images, Google image search is, probably the best search engine to use, and there's a way to make sure that you're not infringing on any copyright using the advanced feature and using Creative Commons, which I highly recommend you do. And using the PNG format. So you might be aware that JPEG was the dominant image file format previously, but there are some limitations for JPEG and PNG file formats, as well as GIFs, unanimated GIFs, are much more versatile, especially when it comes to transparency. And if you are looking for icons, there's a handy little website called Icon Finder that you can select, if you want to get a free Creative Commons icon, and there's thousands and thousands to choose from using the search there. Okay, so let's quickly jump into it. We'll come back to this, and so I'll just show you a quick example. You don't want it to look something like this because, that's probably, as the title says, the world's worst website. You can see all the mistakes that they've made. None of the font is the same size. They've got moving things that distract you. Backgrounds are different colors, and pretty much goes against every single tip that I just went through. But then you can go to something like this, which is very sleek, very, very, very professional, and, can be achieved, and you have a little bit more, information down below, but, it goes out and it looks nice and it's, effective in its aims. So let's quickly create a site. You should all, let me quickly go back. So go to your Google, once you're ready to create a site, site's up here, create. So I'm just going to create a site for my, for a, we'll say a science site, okay, for my, whatever, we'll say it's a science site for my secondary school. So I'm going to, you have an option for these templates, but I find that it is much easier, especially if you've done your planning, to do using from a blank template, because it's much harder to go back and delete all the stuff that you don't need than it is to just create the stuff that you do need. So, for beginners and people who are just starting out and who want to have a play around, the gallery is great. It gives you some really good ideas with some of the websites. So what should I include? And it's good for when you're brainstorming, you're planning in your planning phase. But I find it's it's much easier to start from blank and build up from there. So I want to make name my site. So what naming convention that I've used? At my school, at the beginning of each site we had DLS. So to identify which school, DLS Revesby, and I'm going to create the science test. I'm just going to call it science test because I think there's already a science site, and I'll have to delete this later. And it is possible to delete sites once you, if you haven't, made a mistake and you don't want to use it anymore. It's probably a good idea to delete it, especially if you've taken up a generic name. It gives you the URL here, and probably want to get rid of one of these because, as you can see in the URL, it's giving me three of those hyphens. Okay, so you can select the theme, and Google Sites has included a brand new one, which I think is very, very good. It's good, especially it's a nice, clean design, and we'll be using that today. It's called Ski, and I'll show you some of the benefits of using the Ski theme. Also, each of these themes has its own little quirks, I would say. For instance, I know that the blank slate, if you have an image with a link to it, will put a little border around your picture. So if you don't want to have borders around your pictures, you probably have to pick and choose which one you want to use. So if you want a white background, you're probably have to going to go with one of these simple blank slate or iceberg. That will give you a nice white background. You can customize it at the end, but the things you can't customize are what an image looks like when it has a link behind it, which I found is one of the biggest drivers of me choosing a particular theme. So I've chosen Ski. I'm going to go down here, and create. There are some more options. For instance, do you want to have any categories or site description? You can always edit that later.
Can I just stop you there on that one?
Yep.
Site categories is pretty useful, particularly when you want to search for things under sites. So we'd encourage people to pop a category in. So you might want to put science, learning or something like that, teaching, DLSL, Revesby, etc.
Did I spell that right?
No.
Learning. Okay.
That sort of thing.
Cool. So, and then we're going to create.
Yeah, I think you need to separate them with commas, but you can change it later.
Yep. Okay, so I've created my website. At the moment, plenty of white space, so I'm doing something right. But, it's very, very bare bones at the moment. So I'm going to want to include things like, So I'll go back to my presentation. So a simple header, something that is simple, to the point, maybe has a little bit of an icon that can be recurring through that carries a theme. For instance, you might want to have the header certain colors, or because the header is going to appear on all of your pages, you're going to want something that carries, that carries the theme throughout, and it's something that is consistent. For instance, you might want to use the same font as you use in your website as well. So there's little things, little hints there when creating the header, and you don't want something too big or too small. Something that works well to achieve your aim. So you can see, for instance, this is my last year's one. I had something quite large. Okay, it showcased, because it was a PE, because I'm a PE teacher, it showcased many of the sports, that I, was a fan of, as some of my students were a fan of. It got them interested. So, we have a large, because DLSL is Brisbane, it's in the Canterbury district. I put in, some subtle hints that gets them talking, gets them interested in the website. Okay, and you can notice that the colours, all fluoro, bright colours, are carried throughout down below in the pictures and throughout the rest of the pages. So colour is used as something that grabs their attention, and it is used throughout the rest of the website as well. You'll notice that in the next iteration of the PE website, that I've used the theme of blue throughout the whole website. So my links are the same kind of blue as the horizontal bar. The behind in my header, okay, the same blue is used. So that's all. We're about that consistency, okay. And even in the staff portal, I've used even the same consistent header, so even the staff know that DRP, it's blue. Even the background's blue. I've kept that consistent throughout, and I think that's really important to get people coming back and back, because they subconsciously they know what they're looking for. They know that it's PE because it's it's blue. So yeah, using color as a tool is very, very important. Don't just put it in because it looks pretty, because it's it might be the driver of which color you choose. And again, important when you're choosing colors, don't choose colors that are hard to read. Like, don't put yellow on a white background. That's pretty obvious there. But don't overlay. There's other little small design tips, like don't overlay yellow on blue, and there's some clashing colors. Keep it, but keep things consistent is the key. So let's move on with our simple header. So I'm going to show you Picmonkey now. Picmonkey.com. Okay, so what it does is you have to have a photo ready, okay, and then you can edit the photo. So for instance, I'm going to use Google image search. So let me go to, image search, and you can go to.
Can you speak it?
Oh, let's I don't know.
Sorry.
There used to be an advanced button. There's no more anymore. So, now I'm using image search. Sorry, 1 second. So you can go to Google Advanced Image Search. I'm not sure where the link is now. It used to be underneath. But at the bottom, you'll see usage rights. So they're free to use, share, or modify. So the keyword here is modify, because we are going to add in text and we're going to adjust it with Picmonkey. So that's the one I want. So I can advanced search, and we're going to search for, because I'm making a science website obviously, so I'm just going to do science. Hopefully that gives me a nice set of images to look at. Okay, and then at the top, Google image searches just now, you got your refined searches in showing you some displays as well. So something that is simple, but easy on the eyes. I'll choose this one. Okay, view original image. Okay, so I'm going to save that image. Okay, I'm going to go to Picmonkey now. Edit a photo. I'm going to drag it. I'm not sure if this works. Drag it in. No. Okay, so I'm going to find that. Okay, I found my picture. Okay, so now it's opening Picmonkey, and what it does is it gives me a whole host of options over here. Okay, so my banner, obviously, this is way too tall to be my banner, so I'm going to crop it. Okay, I want the nice, pretty colours in there, so might want it nice and skinny. Maybe bring it up a little bit. All right, so at the moment that's pretty nice, and you'll notice counting pixels. Once you've played around with proportions and all that, pixels become pretty important. So at the moment it's not too bad, so we're fine. I'm fine with that. But I'll show you how pixels come into play once I insert it into the site. So I'm just going to apply that. It's going to crop it for me. Okay, I can change the exposure. I can reduce the brightness. I maybe want to highlight it a little bit more to make those colors come alive a little bit more. Okay, so once I've done that, and you've got the text tool, so I can apply that. And my text, so adding the text, it gives me a box here. I'm going to change quickly to white, because otherwise I can't read it. And I'm going to say, just quickly put a science class. And there's a heap of fonts. Picmonkey can be a paid app, so if it doesn't have this little crown next to it, means it's free. If it does have a little crown next to it, for instance here, it'll go that this is a Royale feature, you need to upgrade. Okay, but there is a ton of stuff that doesn't have the crown that is free to use. So, you can go through and you can choose any font you like. Okay, you can make it bigger, drag it out, and I've only picked up this today, and it's very, very, very simple to use Picmonkey as an image editing tool. So I can have that. It's a little bit too small, so I might make it just a bit bigger. So drag it across. I want it on a single line because I want to keep that long and skinny consistency. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
You need to point at the edge. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so science class, and I'll show you the importance of a PNG file over a JPEG file. So if I go now to the rounded corners, what it does is it'll round the corners, right? But if I want it to be transparent, so it'll show up like that on my website, or it will show up like that. If I've got a white background, obviously you're not going to see those corners. But if I've got a grey background or something like that, those corners are going to show up white. So if I can make them transparent, a PNG file format allows them to be transparent. And no matter what the background color is, it won't show up those corners. So I think that's a really important, if you want to make things, transparent without those borders of, the ugly borders of around a JPEG that somebody's just copied and pasted off the internet. You can avoid that by cutting it out in a tool like Picmonkey, or if you're proficient in Photoshop or Pixlr or any of those other tools. There's another program called GIMP, GIMP. It's a downloaded software that you can download, similar to Photoshop but completely free, and has a lot of the functionality. It even opens up Photoshop files. So, but there might be a bit of a learning curve. But for something very, very simple, we're going to apply. Okay, and we're just going to save that. So notice saving as a PNG. If I save it as a JPEG, it won't it won't allow me to have that transparency on the sides. So I'm going to keep it as a PNG file. I'm going to save the world. It might be you want to keep also just a quick reminder, websites, the speed in which they load is also very important. People aren't going to go to a website that takes, 30 seconds to load. That's too long. Okay, it's all about that instant gratification. So the size of your images depends heavily, is directly related to how quickly it loads. If you don't have the best, bandwidth or internet connection, okay, files that are, a lot bigger will definitely impact on how quickly they load. Okay, so it's very important that you're not making things that are too big. Okay, because you can insert in Google Sites, you can insert, big raw photos and then just press the large, small, medium file, and it does shrink them, but those images are still very, very big. Okay, so you need to keep that in mind. So that is a little bit, big, but as a header, not too bad. So I'm going to save that photo. It's going to save it there. Okay, and I'm going to go back to my created website, which is over here. Okay, and I'm going to insert it as a header. Okay, a lot of people confuse the two with a background image and a header. A header is inserted through here, edit the site layout. So I'm going to edit my site layout. I'm going to hover over my header section. Okay, I'm going to use a custom logo. Okay, so custom logo, I'm going to choose that science. If I do it from date modified, I think. If I go now.
You just had it, yeah.
Okay, I've got it here, Science World at Night. It's got the little science class there. Enter, return. Okay, do I want it in the top left? Do I want it in the middle? Do I want it in the right? I'm going to put it in the middle for both. Okay. At the moment, the height, we'll see what the height of the theme default value is at the moment. But it should be fine. Okay, so it's not fine. It's way too big. Okay, so we're going to go back, and I might have to shrink that photo, that down. So if I do this to about 300, 500 pixels, will it shrink it or it'll cut it?
Too big. I think you need to make it small.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously that's too big. So in Picmonkey, I've made it way too big. So what I'm just going to do, quickly go back. I'm going to save. I'm going to change this. The dimensions are obviously way too big. So change it. I'm going to keep it the same ratio. So the width of an average site is about maybe 1,000 to 1,200 pixels. Okay, so I'm just going to make it maybe 700. It's going to shrink it down for me.
Launching the knuckle plexer.
I'm not sure what the knuckle plexer is, but it sounds awesome.
Let's just hope it works.
Hopefully it doesn't take forever.
Give it a sec.
Knowing my luck, it will.
Maybe hit cancel and try again.
Okay, let me try that once more. Maybe 500.
That's better.
Save that. Make that number 2. Save. Sorry about this. Okay, so that's obviously too big, so I'm going to choose another file. I'm going to choose the new one that's a lot smaller.
It's probably good that everyone sees that, because that's a very common experience, that you get the image the wrong size and you need to go back and change it. So.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you need to do trial and error, okay? Things might be, off, things might be, not quite right. See now, if I go here, this is 500 pixels big. My logo is not 500 pixels high, so my site header is way too big. So I'm just going to use the logo size. It's going to shrink the header down for me, and it's going to be nice and big. But at the end, it's got this, ugly text, and it's got this search bar here that I don't like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of both of them. So because obviously they know it's science because it's over here. You're doubling up on the information that you don't need. Okay, so to get rid of that, I'm going to close this. To get rid of the heading, what you need to do is to manage the site. Okay, there's this box up here, show the site name at the top of pages. If you uncheck that, because now the logo is going to appear at the top of the page for every page. So you don't need the site name to appear. Okay, and while I'm here, I'm going to get rid of that search box. To do that, I'm going to go into Configure Search, which is still in the General menu, Configure Search. I'm going to disable the search and go OK, press Save. It's going to go back, and now it's going to be at the top. Okay, no more ugly header, no more search box. Okay, if you need search, if you want search, it's great to have it there. If people need to search for something, that's great. But because I keep things to 3 clicks minimum, they really don't need a search because nothing's going to be more than 3 clicks away. Okay, so I've got that there. One of the benefits of navigation, and I think I've got it in the next slide, is horizontal navigation. I find is a little bit more effective than on the left pane, because it allows hover over. And what I mean is, for instance, if you go to this site, you hover over this, and without even clicking, I can get to year 11 PE. Okay? Whereas if I had it on the left bar, I'd have to click it and expand it, or click it and then go to that page and then go to 11 PE. So it does allow, getting rid of that one extra click. So it is very powerful, that hover over. So let's quickly go back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this left pane to a horizontal navigation style. And before I do that, I might want to add a few pages in. And this is where that page hierarchy comes in. So I'm going to add in maybe Year 7 Science. And I want to put it under Home. Okay, because I want that home page to be my main page, and then I'm going to have offshoots off that. Okay, but the template to use is also important. Okay, fine for Year 7 Science. That's fine to have that as a web page. What that means allows you to just add in the text, similar to what we've been doing. Okay, that front page was a web page. File cabinets allow you to have, your uploaded documents onto the website directly. But now with the introduction of inserting folders into the Google site from your drive directly, file cabinet, it can be used effectively, but there are other alternatives there.
Better alternatives.
Yeah, much better alternatives, because I think you only have a limit of the size of the amount you can upload to a Google site as well. Yeah, which is very, very limiting. A list is, to be honest, I haven't really used lists much because they are very, very fiddly, and something that can be achieved with an embedded spreadsheet is 10 times more effective.
I think the thing I found with filing cabinets and list pages is it's good for static information that's not going to change very regularly, if at all. But if you want to include a dynamic list of files, a list of files that is going to change reasonably regularly, then you're better off using integrating with Google Drive. I'm not sure if we'll get a chance to see that. You can contact me if you're interested in learning how to do that. You can contact us offline after that. And similar with the list page, you could use something like a spreadsheet, insert a spreadsheet list or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, and an announcements page is great for updates. For instance, I've got an announcements page that I make announcements for my PE, and you can insert a gadget on your front page, which is very, very handy to have the most recent. I've got here the 3 most recent updates that have been made. Okay, and it's good for achievements and announcements to the whole group, to your whole audience as well. But for the meantime, we're just going to make a web page, create. Okay, I'll press save there. I'll go home, and then I'll insert another page. Because if I create another page directly from the one that I've just created, it won't give me the option to put it under home again. It'll give me the option of where I came from. So that's really important, especially if you want to put it in home. There is the ability to reorder things later, and I'll quickly show you how to do that. So 8 science, I'll make that, I'll put it under home because I want to be consistent. And in order to reorder things, you can just do it through here. You go to Manage Site, and you go to Pages on the left. And once you expand, you can drag and reorder things that way. Okay? So yeah, I want to get rid of this left pane here. So what I'm going to do is going to edit the site layout again. Okay, so I'm going to deselect the sidebar, and I'm going to insert horizontal navigation. And you'll notice in this, once I've started editing, so it's only got home as a default. So I have to individually add what I want in this navigation. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click that. It's going to bring up this configuration window. I'm going to start adding in my pages that I've created. Ooh, 8 slides. Okay, and you can also add URLs. So for instance, I want to add in the Sydney Morning Herald. That's that URL, by the way. www.smh.com.au. Okay, so press that, okay, and that's going to come up as well. Let that update. Okay, so now you'll see, and a part of this new theme that we've got, what was it called? It's called Ski. You've got the nice little horizontal, the popover highlighting, and it does have hover over. So if I did have pages beneath this, it would hover over, and you would be able to get that.
So Jason, how would you put 7 Science, 8 Science, and SMH underneath the home menu?
Okay, so if I did want to put that underneath there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Edit Site Layout, click that. Okay, so now I've got it all there, but what I want to have this home, and if I hover over it, I want to have 7 Science, 8 Science, and Sydney Morning Herald underneath that. So maybe that frees up a little bit more space on my horizontal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight what I want to have under it. I'm going to indent it. I'm going to indent it. I'm going to indent it. So now you can see that these are nested underneath this main top page. I'm going to press OK, close. Now,
maybe refresh. You might need to click in this case.
So now I've hovered over it, 7 and 8 Science and Sydney Morning Herald appear. Okay? So if I wanted to, as Greg was saying before, if I wanted to insert a set of folders or whatever, I'm going to edit the page, and you'll notice that if I insert, there's a whole host of things that I can insert. Okay? Whether it be YouTube clips, a group discussion, a document that you might have, but that folder from my Google Drive, if I click folder, it allows me to, it automatically finds all my folders that are in my Google Drive, and if I embed this, I'm going to select it. I tend to find borders not very nice to look at, and it knows what it is. So I'm going to press save because there's nothing else on the page. I'm going to center it. I'm going to press OK, and that'll embed. Because I've got a folder within folder, that'll embed the folder. So if I change the name, if I update any files within that, it'll update it automatically, which is really, really great. And I think
that's got some files in it.
And I'll just edit this because I'll show you one that has files in it.
Change
that.
Do the VC support resources.
20?
Yeah, that would. Then that one. Yeah.
So select, save. Okay, so you can see that, and because this folder isn't even owned by me, so if this is owned by Greg, so if he goes into his drive and starts making changes, starts, changing what's inside that folder, maybe adjusting, maybe he might want to change this presentation, it'll update it with the most recent stuff, whatever is in that folder in his Google Drive. Okay, so we might come back to that. I think he's going to make some changes, and we might come back to that. So let's go back to this thing. Simple header, color as a tool, so very important. Horizontal, as I said, allows hover over. Site width and site pixels versus percentages. You can change, I think, especially when you're looking at coming from different perspectives, like coming from an iPad, looking at the site from different resolutions, it's important that things scale. What I mean is, for instance, if I was to look at this website here, actually I'll use this one as an example. If I was to look at this one example, and maybe someone has a lower res screen, maybe a projector that's a bit of a lower res screen, and you might have that in your classroom. It might preview as something like that as a default. Okay, so something that's low res, it might not scale well to where you're going to be using it most. For instance, if you're going to bring this up in your classroom, and you only have a very low res projector or a screen or whatever it is, and you make the site on your laptop, which is a high res screen, it won't scale well. So you need to keep that in mind. Where's your audience going to view your site from the most? Are they going to be looking on iPads? iPads, the difference between a retina display and a non-retina display has a different resolution. So you need to consider those things.
Jason, just conscious that we're coming up to 4:30, and just looking through the site or the questions. There were some questions from our folks from Bridgerdine College.
Yep.
On permissions, but I'm thinking before we do that one, just wondering if we might open it to the floor and see if there's anyone who has a specific question or a specific thing that you'd like us to demonstrate or show. So we'll throw it open to the floor. If you've got something that you'd like us to look at or discuss or demonstrate.
Does that mean that you should create it at the lowest? But then how do you do that?
Hello?
Sorry, hello?
Hi.
Oh, is that us?
No?
I have a question.
Hello?
Yeah,
Are
yeah.
we on?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, who's this, please?
We're wondering, when you say consider resolution and things like that, what do you do about it though?
I'll quickly show you.
Sorry, who was that? Who was asking the question? Thanks.
St Joseph's Oatley.
Oh, okay, right. Where are you? Can you wave so we can't quite see?
You know who I'm talking to?
Wave. All right.
Are you on the Hangout? No. Hold on. Are you guys on the Hangout?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yep.
There you are. Right, gotcha. Okay. Right.
So, for instance, if I want to make sure that it scales, the important thing to do is to use percentages when you are when you're working. So I'm going to edit my site layout, and my site width is probably one of the most important parameters of a site. So I want to make it custom, and I'm going to use a percentage. See how it says PX or percentage? PX just stands for pixels. So if I want to do 800 pixels, that's what it looks like. If I want to do, 1,000, it's obviously going to make it wider. But if my screen isn't 1,000 pixels wide, it's still going to stay at 1,000. So it's going to overlap on the screen. So a way to get around it is to use a percentage. So I want to say 80% of the screen I wanted to cover with my site width, okay? Which is pretty much on the money with 1,000 pixels. If I wanted to make it, you know, long and skinny site, that's for mobile. That's designed for mobile, it might be. So it's what you want. You need to know your audience and you need to consider that aim. So I hope that helps. And especially with, you know, that if this header was, if I only wanted my thing to be 400 pixels, or maybe if I wanted to use a percentage, maybe 40%, wanted to keep it that wide, my header is too big now because it's wider than my header. So if I was to have a really, really long and skinny header and it was wider than my percentage, you know, at 100% zoom or whatever it was, you need to really consider that as well. That's why it's probably not a good idea to have a really long and skinny header, okay? I hope that answers your question. So
yeah,
use percentages when you can.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Do we have any more questions for Jason from our folks on the VC?
Hi, yes, it's Mary from St Michael's of Belfield.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Mary.
Hi. I was just wondering, can you archive a site rather than delete it?
Yeah.
When you say archive,
like
the sites will remain there until you delete them.
So if
they'll only be deleted if you specifically go through and delete the site. Jason, you may want to show quickly how to delete a site.
Okay, so
yeah,
Sorry, Mary, what was that?
Yeah, I didn't particularly want to delete it. Like if we've done a site just related to a theme, and we're not going to teach that theme or that topic, you know, till this time next year.
Yeah.
Is there some way of just archiving all that information that we've put onto the site rather than deleting it? I suppose.
Oh well, you can just leave it there, and it will remain there until, you know.
Do you want to? When you say archive, do you mean copy the information to another place?
Possibly, or I'm just thinking, I just obviously wouldn't put the link up.
Yeah, you can just disable whatever was linking to it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, if I don't if I've got my Year 8 PE class, if I don't want them to go to Term 4 stuff, say it's Term 1 next year, if I don't want them to be able to go stuff that I've saved from last year, Term 4, I'll just disable that link, and I'll show you how to do that quickly.
That's
I'm going to highlight for those people who don't know and just disable. Sorry.
Just click on it. You can
click it and remove. Or the link's already been removed. And now that's unclickable.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Good question. Any
other questions?
Any other questions from the floor?
I have another one, if that's okay. It's Mary.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, sorry, you've used up your quota, Mary.
Just if students create sites, do they have the same options as we have in the teacher domain, or?
So, really good question. They can do everything that you can do with a site if they are the owner of the site, except, and Jason's showing this now, the thing that they can't do is make a site completely public. So if Jason just zooms in on those top visibility options, just Command plus, Apple plus. Yeah, you can see those two top visibility options, public on the web and anyone with the link. They don't have those options, right? So students cannot create something and make it completely public on the internet. Of course, they can share something with you as their teacher, and then you can make it public on the internet for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
Cool.
Any other questions? All right. So, Jason, you might want to just quickly... we had one other... Oh, geez, I'm going to have to nick your power.
Okay.
We had one other question about page level permissions.
Okay, so page level permissions are important if you're going to have sections of the site for access from staff and sections for just students. So, for instance, if you can see this, this here, I've got a section of the side here that says staff site. So, if you are one of the members of staff in the PE section, you'll have this option available. I'm not sure if I preview this as a viewer.
Jason, I can't see that.
Oh, you can't see that? I might have shared it. Can you see my screen?
No, I can only see the science test class.
Yeah, that's right.
Which one?
Oh, okay. We may have had a delay on our.
Okay, sorry. 1 second.
So you're not seeing
Just
Jason's PDHPE site now?
No, the science class.
All right.
Okay, we're just going to disable and enable it again. Just hold for a sec. And so you shouldn't see anything now. Is that right? There should be no display of Jason's screen. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see how we go this time.
How's that?
Yep, now I can see the PDHPE.
All right.
Yes,
great.
Good. Thanks.
So now if you look here, I've got a section for just the staff. So what it does is I've made a site within a site. If you can imagine that, just using an iframe. But the kids don't even have this option because they don't have the permission to see that. So what I've done is, in the share option, I've turned on page level permissions. I've added all of my people that I want to see everything at the top level. See at the top level here? I've added everybody. So you can see that the staff can edit the page, but then I've got a group made with all staff and all students. So only the PE staff can edit, and all staff and all students can view. I've then got, see here, down here, I've selected staff site page. And because I've turned on page level permissions, I can hover over the groups. So for seeing all students, it's a bit faded, but you can see all students group, I've removed them from the option. So they can't even now see that as an option in the navigation. So what I can do is, I'll just quickly show you, if I wanted to remove somebody, I'm going to change the permission. So it says use the same permissions as the top level. I don't want to use the same permissions at the top level because I want to change it. I want to, and there's two options that it gives you. If you want to add new members to this page, you select this one. So I'm going to use custom. If I want to add new users to the page, that's an option. If I just want to do not add users to this, do not add new users to this page, that will be the option there. So it doesn't matter because I'm just removing users. They've already been added. So I'm going to save that. Okay, so now it gives me the option to get rid of some people from this group. So if I don't want students to see that section, I just click the X. I'm going to press Save Changes. Obviously, I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to press Cancel. But then that will remove those people to see that as an option. Okay, and they won't have permission to see that. So hopefully that answered that question.
So folks, just to let you know, I've just emailed everyone who registered a link to a YouTube video which takes you through page level permissions. So page level permissions in Google Sites, as Jason was probably gave you the elevator pitch on it, the 25 words or less. But it does take a little bit of time to get your head around. So there's an excellent video which I've just emailed everyone. You can take your time to go through it. I'd strongly suggest that you do that if you want to get into page level permissions, because it does take a little bit of time to get your head around it. So have a look at that video that I've sent through. By the way, the video is also linked on the document where people put up questions. about these VC sessions. So you'll see the links there as well.
I just want to quickly, and I'm aware of the time, so thanks guys for sticking around, show you some, a really, really good website that's helped me a lot is Steagle.com. It has in its help and how-to section, it's got a lot of information, really, really good step-by-step information on how to do different things. For instance, I'll quickly show you an example of something that I'm just going to show them the eLearning website.
And just do elearning.sid.cafe.
Oh, yeah.
There it is.
Okay, so there are some little tricks that I've picked up from Steagle actually that allow you to use presentations to do some navigation. Okay, so Steagle is a really, really good website, and I highly recommend if you are playing around with Google Sites to give them a go and check them out. Okay, so and these are even live links that link outside to the website as well. So,
Jason, Jason,
yep.
the PHPE page is still up, not the
Oh,
Steagle.
really?
No, okay. Right, okay.
Sorry.
We'll just get out of that again and then go back into it.
Oh, yeah. That's
Okay,
good.
so try it again.
So, it says, Steagle here, so which is this website. Can you see that?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, cool.
And check the e-learning one.
So, Steagle has helped me in these how-to sections. So you go to help and the how-to or beginners or whatever it is. It has a ton of information, which is really great. And I'll show you what it's helped. It's allowed me to do some, things that are not really possible in Google Sites with this combination of to do some navigation. So it allows you to do a little bit of, some trickery there when it comes to presentations in Google Sites. So if I edit the page, what you'll see is some embedded gadgets that I got, okay, that just point to presentations. And the information is all there on how to work them and how to modify.
So folks, it looks like we're having some people having to dip out. I think we'll finish things off there unless anyone's got any final burning questions.
Thanks, Jason and Greg.
No worries. Also, if you want these little pictures at the top, they're called favicons. Google how to do them, and it's really, really simple to do.
So we'll finish it there. Just to let you know that we have recorded this session, and we'll be putting this session up with the other two sessions within the next, or before the end of this term anyway. So folks, thanks for coming along. Thank you very much to Jason for an excellent presentation. We hope you got something out of it, and we'll be doing some more of these sessions next term.